Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, can the big win over the weekend against the Golden State Warriors be the launching pad that the Phoenix Suns need to turn the corner and finally prove that they're the dominant team we have felt like they are most of the season? Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Suns. I'm Brendon Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to kick off your week. Happy Monday. Don't forget Locked On Suns is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So click that follow or subscribe button and do it. Thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer and get locked onto the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Today's episode, folks, brought to you by FanDuel. Start the season with a big return on FanDuel, where new customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right. Of course, the Suns did win against the Warriors, 113-105 on Saturday night. There is a recap episode up in the feed already of that game if you missed it. So I am going to be focusing on looking ahead. And by that I mean, can that game be a launching point, something where the Suns, a turning point, an inflection point, whatever you want to call it, for the Suns to prove and put together a stretch where they are as dominant as I think a lot of us feel like they are, that they have looked like at times this season, but have never been able to string together a full stretch of proving that they are. Can this game be that for the Suns? All right, because the reality is they need to be more consistent, and the stats don't show that they are any kind of great right now at all. The Suns are 18th in net rating. They are 14th in offense and 20th in defense. That's below average. They're getting outscored overall per 100 possessions. They are, a negative team in that way, and they're only 11-8. But that Warriors game to me felt like an exact inverse of the Timberwolves game 2 weeks beforehand, where shorthanded, obviously you have Booker and Durant in this game, but no Beal, no Nurkic. In that Minnesota game, it was no Beal, no Durant. And big Western Conference matchup, weekend game with a lot of eyeballs. And instead of coming up short, the Suns beat the Warriors. In that Wolves game, they proved so much. Booker puts the team on his back. They execute the double big thing. They play a unique kind of defense. They're able to go toe-to-toe with great Randall games and great Anthony Edwards games. In this Warriors game, obviously they didn't have to deal with an amazing Steph Curry performance or anything like that, but the Warriors threw a punch, and you have to... The similarity beyond that is you also have to lock in and execute something, as I talked about in the recap episode, similar, not obviously going with two bigs the way that they did in Minnesota, but the Warriors are another team that really make you focus in order to play good defense on them the way that the Suns were able to. And so the fact that they won makes me really optimistic that it can be that inflection point and can kind of turn the page now that they're healthy and everything else. I saw some people wanting me to talk about the Nets game, and I will do that a little bit here, mostly to draw the comparison point from how ugly and lethargic they looked against Brooklyn on Wednesday to how locked in and dominant, I will say, they looked against the Warriors for most of that win. So I have three things to look at today. Defense, lineups, and rookies. To me, those are the three areas of this team that need to click for the Suns to use that game as the inflection point that I'm kind of throwing it out there as, okay? So let's start with everybody's favorite one. Defense. It's not the sexiest thing to talk about, and I get that, but here's a few things to keep in mind, all right? Part of why I keep talking about that Minnesota game and this Golden State game as big moments in the Suns season overall, but also kind of comparative games, connected games here, is because they illustrate what I think we've always known about this Suns team, even last year, definitely this year. They are going to need to be a situationally strong defensive team. And so what that means is situationally strong to handle certain challenges that are put to them and execute schemes, but also situational within a game, right? So executing a game plan and adjusting within a game flow. And the game plan one happened for sure in both of those games, right? The double big thing, and in this Warriors game, Steph Curry. And I loved how they guarded Steph Curry. I thought that whether it was how the big men were executing, especially Ighodaro, how different players, throughout the course of that game, Tyus Jones, Devin Booker, Grayson Allen, and Royce O'Neal all got chances to defend Steph Curry. But of course, it's a team effort. Guys get switched. Steph Curry likes to move. You saw Kevin Durant with some nice closeout defense at times. You saw Ryan Dunn and Oso getting in there as rim protectors in a couple of moments where Steph drove to the basket. All of these little things add up over the course of the game, and the Suns were able to do it. And that is going to be the blueprint. That is what they're going to need to do. It's not like again, to look at this Nets game, the situation of that is beat a better team, beat a worse team, be the better team is what I meant to say. And they couldn't do it. The Nets don't really reinvent the wheel on the offensive end. If you bring the requisite energy, you're going to beat them. So maybe part of this is that these challenge games actually do sort of bring a better defensive intensity out of the Suns. They've had some decent performances against somebody like a Luka Doncic this year. Maybe that's kind of what they need. It shouldn't be that way in order to rise to that moment, but I guess it's better than not rising to that moment, right? So that's going to need to be there. A few other things, right? Their offense is going to be their best defense. And I know we always say that about teams that have a better offense than they do their defense, and we're like maybe trying to cut them some slack. I really don't mean it that way. I mean it in two very specific ways. One, the Suns' offense is going to be a big part of their defense because when they do not turn the ball over, their life gets much, much easier on the defensive end, right? If they're not allowing their opponent to get out into transition, life is easier. The Suns are a decent enough transition defense this year, but they've had some games where it has been exposed, and any team is going to put themselves behind the eight ball when they do not take care of the ball. The Nets capitalized on 17 Suns turnovers in order to go ahead and beat them like they did last week. That cannot happen. The other way that the Suns' offense is going to be a big part of their defense is that they have this way, and you saw this in the Warriors game. There was a chunk of the game in the middle of the third quarter where the Warriors cut it to 7. They cut it to 6. I believe it might have even been 5 at one point. Steph misses 2 bunnies off the glass during this stretch. But what the more important part was from a Suns standpoint is they responded in those moments with big baskets of their own, right? Book hits the corner 3 as he thinks he's getting fouled by Podziemski. I believe there were maybe some transition buckets mixed into that stretch. And so there is a morale thing with all of this on the defensive end. I believe that, especially if you're not a dominant defensive team, the spirit and the effort and the energy are big, and not hanging your head is going to help you not fall into those lapses and bring that energy. And so if you're able to score and stop runs by scoring on the offensive end, I just think that matters. Maybe I'm in too deep here. Maybe I'm off in fantasy land, but I truly believe it. That is another way that the Suns are going to be a better defensive team than maybe their talent or even the numbers show, and something that they can feel very good that they proved they can do coming off of that Warriors game, right? Because we talked about it when we talked about Mike Budenholzer last Monday in our Grading the Newcomers episode, which, come on, guys, you didn't freaking listen to. Please go back. It was a good one. It was a big picture analysis, which we don't always get to do because these games are coming so fast and furious. But if you listen to that, you know the Suns are allowing exactly the types of shots that Mike Budenholzer wants them to allow. Opponents get the 5th fewest at rim shots, second fewest corner threes, seventh fewest total threes. That is Bud Ball. I know I talked about it coming off the Warriors win, Bud Ball win, right? I kept saying that over and over in the recap show, but I mean it. Teams are getting a little bit lucky against the Suns, making a bunch of threes. You'd like that to flip. Maybe there's some defensive adjustments you can make there. They're middle of the pack in terms of how many of those at-rim shots are going in. But all you can really do is make teams shoot where you want them to. The Suns are doing that. They could get a few more turnovers, yes, but they rebound well. They don't foul. Also things Bud has always done. All you got to do is keep trusting that process, buckle down, bring energy, and meet the moment with that level of execution, and hopefully have your offense catch you some breaks. And I think we will see that defensive number move up from 20th to more where I think this team wants it to be, in that 15 to 10 range. Better than average, but not elite. I think that's what we can expect, and I think they're on their way there. Next, let's get to lineups, and what I mean by that is the big three all on the court, not as good as you would expect. Again, what's going on there? We'll break it down next. First, today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. For some, wrapping up in a blanket with a mug of hot chocolate or watching a movie with family is the best way to spend the month of December. And therapy is a great way to bring yourself some comfort that never goes away, even when the season changes. Because look, honestly, the holidays can be challenging in some ways, but they also provide these built-in moments to spend time with loved ones. That's not always there for you. Take that forward. Find ways to find that feeling after the holidays, in the new year. Therapy is not always about emergencies or trauma. It can be about learning positive coping skills, empowering you to be the best version of yourself, and just feeling comfortable. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's online, convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you got to do to get started is fill out a questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch anytime for no additional charge. So find comfort this December and beyond with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Keeping the show rolling here, let's talk lineups, all right? And that might be a strange way to say that, right? You might be thinking lineups like, I mean, 5 guys are always on the court. What's going on? The rotation looks pretty set. But here's what I mean. Finding lineups that are go-tos that work in different situations, right? So I will break down some numbers and some ideas for you. I want to remind you first to check out the Locked On Suns daily newsletter if you're not already. The link is in the show description below. Just scroll down, whether you're on YouTube or Spotify, click that link, type your email in, get up-to-date, great analysis on both the Suns from me and Ben, as well as the NBA from a wonderful crew of writers that we have, some news nuggets and links in there for you, and stay up to date with the show. Best of all, you support the show, and it's absolutely free for you. Let's get those signups up, compete with the rest of our Western Conference foes, and show them what the Valley fans really are about, all right? Okay. So, this season, Durant, Beal, and Booker, all three on the court, 169 minutes, which, I mean, let's just take a moment and appreciate that there's been a real sample, and it's just December 1st. We didn't even see these dudes on the court much together until after Christmas last season, knock on wood, right? So that's good. And it's a good place to start, and the chemistry is certainly building. But the Suns are only +2, basically, in terms of net rating with all three of those players on the court. As one example here, with Book and KD on, they're +13. It's really been Beal for whatever reason, okay? Now, this is not going to be a segment where I pick on Beal. The broader point that I think is worth making is that the Suns need to find lineups with the big three where that number is fully in the positive, okay? And I know what you're thinking already, right? A big part of what has weighed this situation down is Jusuf Nurkic. So a game like the Warriors game, for instance, right? There is no Nurk, and Book and KD play and Bradley Beal does not. That right there is case in point as to where some of these numbers can get skewed, right? So, of course, it's early in the season. Some of that stuff is, of course, going to play into it. But let's look here. The main thing I want to say, and the reason I put it as far as lineups are concerned, is there's just not a lot of lineups that have played a lot of minutes together, period, okay? I looked just now on cleaningtheglass.com, a great stats website, and I said, show me the lineups with all three of the big three on the court, and show me all the units that have played with those big three, okay? And, of course, the starting lineup has played an absolute ton together, but after that, there's really not another one that stands out. There's no 208 possessions for the starting lineup, nothing else above 30, okay? So beyond after that starting lineup, I mean, it tracks with what we've watched. This team does not have a consistent, not only rotation, and partially that is because of injuries, but also ineffectiveness and inconsistency from certain guys. But it's also just they haven't set, even when the rotation is set, what are the players that play together? And that's kind of what I'm saying needs to happen. So when I look at that Warriors game, I mean, I'm going to talk more about the rookies in a moment, but I mean, it's really hard to look at that and not say that Ighodaro needs to play more. I mean, right? Like, if I'm talking about what works, I think it's varieties of small ball. I mean, the more that I'm watching this team, that is what I'm feeling. I even felt like the game was mostly in hand, and I kind of broke down the end of the game yesterday on that recap episode, but I honestly felt like the Suns should have gone to Royce O'Neal with about 3 minutes left when things started to get a little bit tight, versus they waited until there was like a minute left and Bud finally put Royce in to go tiny, let's call it. But to me, Oso at center is small ball. And of course, we've seen other small ball units work as well, especially early on in the season. Nurk has had a lot of problems this year. Unless he can buckle down and find a way to be consistently solid on at least one end of the court, that's going to continue to be true. Plumlee is a matchup-dependent player, and to me, is a backup, low-minute guy, kind of regardless of what you're asking him to do. Okay, but when I look at these lineups, again, with the big three, after, kind of beyond that starting lineup, the second most played lineup and one of the better ones overall is Tyus, Book, Beal, Royce, and Durant. All right, there is also a couple of Plumlee lineups that have actually performed decently, and of course we know that there is the Booker, Beal, Dunn, O'Neal, Durant lineup, which is it played? It is not. Okay, here we go. It is minus 24.3 per 100 possessions in 18 possessions. So definitely the numbers don't say to keep going to that. But whether you're talking about Nurkic getting benched a couple times early with Royce O'Neal closing alongside Tyus in the big three, whether you're talking about what Ben likes to call the death lineup, right, that I just mentioned with the big three and the two wings in Dunn and O'Neal, or you're talking about maybe more traditional small ball, if you want to call it that, where it's just a smaller center who is still a center but just not quite as huge as other players, and that would be more of the Oso look. That to me is where I'm leaning, and the numbers sort of back that up. And what I was talking about in the last segment sort of backs that up. If you're following me here, which is be situationally good on the defensive end. Be swarming, be focused, have some scheme things up your sleeve, whether that is switching or using the mobility and versatility of some of those smaller looks. That is just what I think this team's identity is. And if you're asking me, how do they turn what worked against the Warriors and maybe fix what didn't work against the Nets and play that forward and turn the page toward being a more consistently dominant team, I think 20 games in here, we're talking about let's see what this team's identity is, lock into it, and start to play the hits a little bit. And to me, I know Nurkic has to play. I know Plumlee's going to be in the mix here. I understand all of that. you got to make do at times. But when you want to win, minutes, possessions, quarters, games, and maximize this big three finally in a way that they just haven't been able to. I mean, the number that I just said to you, a 116-ish, 117-ish offensive rating with the big three all on the court, that's worse than it was last year. And you guys convinced me successfully that wasn't good enough last year. And all the times that I would talk about it, you would say, great, that's fine, but this team has to be absolutely elite when those big three are on the court, and they've statistically been even worse this year, even though the team overall has been better. So maximize the big three, find 5-man units that work. I think all of that leads me back to what worked against the Warriors, which is play a little smaller, lean into that identity, and see what it can do for you. Let's focus more specifically on the center I just broke down there. From a lineup standpoint, Ighodaro, more in terms of what he actually does on the court, as well as his rookie draft mate, Ryan Dunn, coming up next. First, today's show is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Get ready to tackle the NFL action this season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Let us look here. Is Suns Spurs up as far as lines are concerned? I guess not. But we do have Lakers at Timberwolves on Monday night. We also have the Hawks as a heavy favorite and the Celtics as a heavy favorite on Monday night as home favorites. Maybe put a little money down there. Get that win bagged. Get your 150 in bonus bets and have some fun the rest of the NFL and NBA season. All at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, let's close it out. Final component of the Suns using that Warriors game as the type of turning point that they really do need to start to string together some big wins and prove that they are a real contender here, all right? We talked about defense, we talked about lineups and maximizing the big three and what the identity is from a personnel standpoint. The last one is the rookies, right? And let's not make this too complicated, at least off the top. Devin Booker said it perfectly. Kevin Durant said it perfectly last night after that Warriors win, okay? They said, Booker said, it is refreshing, it's energizing to be out there with those guys, right? It's not just that they're young and, it's the youth. No, they play that way. They play like young reserves trying to make their mark on a team that wants to win, that they need to prove themselves on, right? That's how they play. It's not just what they are. It's not just who they are, it's what they are, right? And then Kevin Durant basically said, he's been saying this about a lot of players lately, and I think it's a kind of a motivational tactic, right? But he was asked about the rookies, asked about Oso in particular, and he said, look, what Oso's doing, I expect that from him at this point. He has proven it. And so when you kind of add that all up, I just think it's unavoidable. It is just a fact of life for the Suns now that those two guys, Ryan Dunn and Oso Ighodaro, are going to be a part of this group for the rest of the season. I mean, especially when you consider you would expect them to get better, right? I mean, it's only game 20. Guys improve over the course of the season early in their careers. I would hope that you're going to even get a better version of each of them in March or April than you do right now, but they're already very, very impactful. And so that said, right? It's not just play them, do it. They make big plays, they're fun, whatever. No, you kind of need them, okay? And there's a few things about it, right? So with Ryan Dunn in particular, how do you leverage what started to work in that Warriors game. Again, kind of the theme of the show here. What I liked to see from Dunn the past few games, now that the team is healthy again, he's not having to start, and he's not in preseason mode where he's just, getting a ton of minutes and shooting a bunch of shots and all that stuff. It's like, how does Ryan Dunn stay impactful when he's just a guy coming off the bench, right? And to me, it's a few things. I mean, the defense is great. He fouls too much, and I actually think that there's a lot of meat on the bone in both on-ball and off-ball defense for Dunn. The Suns have been a worse team with him on the court, and I think that will change because he just played so much when all the injuries hit. I think that the rim protection and some of that stuff you will continue to see as he gets more comfortable and as he is maybe not always on the ball, right? Like think in the Warriors game, they didn't have him guarding Steph or even Buddy Hield all the time. They had him guarding Kuminga at times and just sort of be in there, right? And I think that will be the evolution for him. The offensive rebounds to me are honestly one of the most impactful things that Ryan Dunn does when he's out there, the put back dunks, because if you're only going to be out there 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes in a game and you're able to get one or two of those, I mean, that is like the most direct effect on the game that you might have that whole time because you are creating a second chance and scoring points, like those plays are big and they're those types of motivational and energizing plays that Book was talking about. When it comes to Oso, I still think we might see him at the 4 sometimes. I'm talking about doing more small ball, but the reality is the Suns do have 2 traditional centers, and maybe Oso does find some time at the 4 as well. But to me with him, I think there's going to continue to be room to improve when it comes to his pick and roll defense. Just the timing and making up for his lack of overwhelming size and athleticism by, being in the right position, reading the floor, moving his feet well, and all those sorts of things. He is a rookie big. I mean, be realistic here. But what else can he do, right? Like, what else are you looking for? And honestly, this applies to Dunn too. Mike Budenholzer's message with these rookies the entirety of the season has been, be aggressive, right? I asked him about Dunn with the three-point shooting and kind of the confidence being in your head, confidence stuff around, crap, I'm only going to get 3 shots in a game. I got to make them. I'm in my head about it. I might be overthinking or pressing or hesitating or whatever the case might be. And he kind of disagreed with the premise of my question. Respectfully, of course. I'm not trying to beef with Mike Budenholzer. Just true. He was like, I don't think that Ryan should be thinking about it as I only have a select amount of shots. I want to see Ryan take tons of shots if they're there for him, right? And he's been saying the same thing about Oso, which is, we all get excited when we see Oso get the ball in that pocket on the roll and fling it back out to the corners or, pass it down to somebody in the dunker spot around the basket or whatever it might be. And Bud's been getting asked, okay, what, how you're liking that, whatever. And he says, I want to see Oso, 1-2 dribbles and a finish off of that, right? Be less predictable. Don't just think I'm a ball mover in those spots. I'm a playmaker in those spots. Put an Amari Stoudemire dunk on their head, right? And so I think that's another area for Oso. We've seen the cuts from the corner, the dribble handoffs. I mean, he's not a shooter. He's even less of a shooter than Dunn. So when he's out there, teams are going to play off of him. Teams are going to put smaller players on him. Teams are going to dare him to be a presence on offense and prove himself there, right? And so those are all going to be ways to do it. Catch the ball and quickly make a Draymond or Bam Adebayo type of ball reversal or quick dribble handoff type of situation. Cut from the corner and get those dunks in there. Maybe try to grow as an offensive rebounder a little bit. That's not really something Oso's done. Those are going to be ways to not only just keep getting minutes, I just think they're going to keep getting minutes, but obviously impact the game as much as possible when those minutes are there. And again, build on a promising game for both, but obviously more so Oso in that win over Golden State. I think we're getting somewhere with this team, guys. The numbers are weird. The injuries have been killer, but there's something here, an identity, a consistency of how they're going to win games, and some things that are, I think, coming into view, into sight about how this is going to look. for the long haul and what this team really is. And I think those are three, and I really do believe that Warriors game can be that type of situation that they need. Because, look, last thing I'll say, when you look at this schedule, the Suns are facing the Spurs at home, depleted Pelicans on the road, Miami on the road, who they already beat and who has been mediocre to start the year. Back-to-back in Orlando's tough. Indiana at home after that, 4 days rest. Pistons. I mean, that is a stretch where you're going to drop some. That Orlando game might be tough. But it's not far-fetched to look at that schedule and say, we have a chance to win every single one of those games. And we should, realistically be looking at, let's dominate December. Especially because the end of December is pretty tough. Let's really make something of this, and I think that they can. That'll wrap us up. Hit follow, subscribe if you haven't already. Sign up for the Locked On Suns daily newsletter, as I mentioned earlier. Become an everydayer, folks. With that newsletter, with the podcast, we got content for you constantly. Then we'll be back tomorrow. We got a game on Tuesday as well that we'll get you ready for and recap for you afterward. Enjoy your Monday, and we'll catch you then.